So welcome, and it's going to be great. We're going to have a great afternoon, and sorry for all the delay in the traffic, but unfortunately that was out of our hands. So have a great afternoon, and there'll be a break, and there will be more book sales and more wild yam sales, and have a great afternoon, okay? See some of you tomorrow. Bye.
How are you feeling? Good mood? Okay. Sorry again about the car park. I'm basically been a car park attendant for the last 15 minutes. So yeah, it's a bit of crack. But I just wanted to say it's great working with Jenny and bringing people like Barbara to Ireland to get to see you guys gather, because that's what it's all about, like-minded people gathering in these kind of spaces to uplift, to share knowledge and the wisdom that this woman has. Here she is, the legend that is Barbara O'Neill.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul, and welcome. Welcome, everyone. I love Ireland. I love your green hills and your sheep roaming on the hills because I'm a wool lover. And in our first class this evening, or this afternoon, there's a word that I wasn't really familiar with. It's called the skinny on weight loss. And it didn't make much sense to me. And then my Irish friend Jenny said, no, that's what we say in Ireland for the truth on weight loss or the facts on weight loss. Am I right? So I've learned a new word. The skinny on weight loss. There are so many different theories on this one. And I know in Australia, 68% of Australians are either overweight or obese. I've just spent a week in London and I didn't see a lot of overweight people. Maybe it's because the traffic's so bad and everyone has to walk everywhere. And everyone has to ride bikes or do scooters everywhere. And Jack and I, we just did a lot of walking because the tube was on strike, so the usual terrible traffic was even worse. We had to go 8 kilometres in an Uber for an event, and it took an hour to go that long. But the people are walking a lot. That's got something to do with it. So what is the truth or the skinny on weight loss? Is it the ketogenic diet? Is it juicing? Is it raw diet? Is it a plant-based diet? So what I'd like to look at, and I always like to know why. There is a reason so many people are overweight, and it has got a lot to do with the food we're eating. Not just the food we're eating, but also activity has a lot to do with it, which is why I think a lot of Londoners aren't carrying a lot of weight, because they're burning it off. They're burning it off. So what is the truth on weight loss? I'd like to first of all do an assessment on the food that many people eat today. And never in the history of mankind have human beings eaten so much of one type of food, and it's carbohydrates. You see, every country has had carbohydrates. In Ireland, they are famous for their potatoes, yes. So let's make a list of carbohydrates. Potato. And my husband is an Irishman, that's why my name is Barbara O'Neill. And every main meal must contain potatoes. And in every country, you've got carbohydrate as part of the diet. But we've come to a time where it's as if people have taken carbohydrates from nearly every culture, every country, and they've put them all together. So I'm going to do a carbohydrate assessment. Now, I did ask if the board could come down a little bit, but it can't. They've got a little tiny, I always thought I was 5'2.5", but I've just discovered I'm 5'1.25". Tragic news. Anyway, I'm little. So yes, carbohydrate is potatoes is one of the carbohydrates. And another one that's probably part of many cultures is bread. And cake shops abound. And I'm not going to list all the cakes. I'm just going to say cakes, etc., because that includes pretzels. It includes muffins and croissants and cookies and biscuits and pasties and pies. all of that. Also, another carbohydrate, and this is from the European, meaning Italian, pizza and pasta. I didn't know what pizza and pasta was when I was a child. I'm a fifth generation Australian Scottish descent. What did we eat every meal? Chops or sausages, mashed potatoes, frozen peas or beans, except for Sunday. Then Mum did a roast lamb. It was interesting to me as I looked at the Italian culture is that most days they have thick minestrone soups and salads traditionally, but instead of roast lamb on Sunday, they more go for the pizzas and the pastas, things that take a little bit of more work. That's like special occasion food, because as a cook I know it takes a bit more work to make these. And another very common carbohydrate that I didn't even know about till I was about 20 is rice. And if I said rice had to stop, I'd be thrown out of Asia. You see what I'm talking about? That every culture has some type of carbohydrate, but it's just like everyone's eating all the carbohydrates all at once. Last and certainly least in nutritive value is the pure crystallized acid that's extracted from the sugarcane plant. Now, all of these carbohydrates break down in the gastrointestinal tract to a singular structure called glucose. And glucose, when it gets into the blood, goes straight to the liver under your right rib. It's called the project manager. Called the project manager because the liver is the organ that determines where the glucose goes. And the first place it is sent is to the cell. The glucose goes in and it goes through a 20-step pathway. And that 20-step pathway delivers to us 2 units of energy. And isn't that why we eat? We eat for energy. For every part of our body, every organ of our body is made up of cells. And there are 100 trillion cells in our body, and 75 trillion are as I'm drawing for you here. Well, what's the other 25 trillion? The other 25 trillion are the red blood cells, and they're the carriers of oxygen to the cell. They're the carriers of the nutrient to the cell. They're the carriers of water to the cell, and they also carry away waste. That's the red blood cell. But every other cell, whether it be brain, whether it be liver, whether it be pancreas, whether it be muscle, every other cell has this little energy cycle in it. Now, after the 20-step pathway, a chemical form of glucose is created called pyruvate. And pyruvate, as the chemical form of glucose, gets fed into this next section of the cell. And this section is called the powerhouse of the cell, because even though it's only an 8-step pathway, it delivers an impressive 36 units of energy. Whoa. So how come a 20-step pathway only gives 2 units and an 8-step pathway gives 36? The difference is oxygen. And how are you going to feel when every single one of your 25 trillion cells has enough oxygen going in to get down to that pathway? You're going to be jumping out of your skin with energy. And that's one thing most people complain they don't have enough of today, is energy. But we're not looking at energy in this class. We're looking at weight gain. So on a high carbohydrate diet, a lot of glucose, and only so much can go through those energy pathways. And so now the liver stores some of the excess as glycogen. Glycogen is a name given to quick-release glucose stores. These are little molecules of glucose just waiting in the muscle cell to be used by the muscle cell. So number 1, that glucose is sent to the cell. Number 2, the glucose is stored as glycogen. This explains why I didn't have to eat before I went on my morning exercise, which is one of my favourite, running up and down your hills, I think at Wicklow out there. and getting some high intensity interval training, I did not need to eat before I went because I've got glycogen stores. And you know where they got built up? Yesterday's lunch. Because we can only use so much of the glucose. Some is stored as glycogen. And if I did eat before I exercised, I wouldn't be able to exercise very effectively or efficiently because my stomach wants all the energy to digest the meal. And I'd create a little bit of a war. My leg muscles would be saying, hey, we want it. And the stomach says, no, we want it. We're busy digesting a meal. But on this high carbohydrate diet, we've still got glucose left over. And so there's only one more place that can be stored. You see, only so much glycogen can be stored in the muscle cell. And when it's in the muscle cell, it's like it's in a prison. It can only be used by the muscle cell. But I'm just going to draw half a liver here. This is a half a liver. L for liver. It can store glycogen too. Now, the beauty of the glycogen that is stored in the liver, it can go anywhere in the body. If my brain needs it, if my toes need it, if any part of my body needs it, it can use the liver's glycogen. But it's the muscle cells only that can use the glycogen stored in the muscle. But we've still got a lot of glucose left over. And so now the body stores it in the most amazing fuel depot in the human body. It's called fat cells. And I know in Australia, on this high carbohydrate diet, people are getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And some of them have believed the rhetoric, if you want to lose weight, you've got to stop the fat. But I've just shown you the basic science. And what does the basic science say? Fat doesn't make you fat. What makes you fat? Is this high carbohydrate diet. Now, I've got some good news before you throw me out of Ireland. Potatoes aren't bad. Whew, what a relief. My husband would never forgive me if the potatoes stopped. Carbohydrates aren't bad, and we like them. It's only when they're overdone and refined. And that's what's happening so much today. We're such a fast society. Everything's fast, fast, fast. And what's fast food? There it is. Every shop in the town, what have they got? They've got all of this. And when I was home on the farm, raising my children up in the rainforest in Australia, I made everything we ate. And this was not fast food. This is the slow food. Takes a while to cook potatoes, takes a while to bake bread, takes a while to bake the cakes, takes a while to make pizza, a while to make pasta, a while to cook the rice. Oh no, I've never tried to refine sugar, but I think that'd take a long time. Message from nature with the carbohydrates is a little less. So what's fast food down on the farm? Apples, bananas, fruit, vegetables. I remember my youngest son, William, because we just had 2 meals a day. We had breakfast like a king. We had lunch like a queen, and sometimes the queen eats as much as the king. And we had tea like a pauper. A lady said to me, what do paupers eat? I said, sometimes nothing. But sometimes we'd eat something if lunch hadn't been big or it was a bit earlier. And it'd be lunchtime, and little Will, he's 3, and I'd call the kids. Do you know the Australian call? I'll try not to blast your eardrums. Cooey! That's the Australian call, cooey. And I'd cooey on the veranda and I'd hear, yeah. And kids would come running and we'd all come in, because I had 6 kids, we'd all sit down at the table and we'd look there, oh, where's William? And we knew where to find him, in the cucumber patch. Because if he was getting a bit hungry and it wasn't lunchtime, and he knew it would be lunchtime if Mum called, he'd be in the cucumber patch. Fast food, pick cucumber, eat. Can you see we've lost a bit of conception living in the city? of the proportions that is the best to eat. Nuts an interesting one. How many people never eat nuts and then buy a packet of cashews and eat the whole lot in the afternoon? But if you grow your nuts, if you're down on the farm and you're growing your nuts and you have nuts at the table, actually I think it's a lovely dessert, a handful of nuts, and you've got to crack the nuts, usually after about 8 nuts, people are going to get it back to work. And yet we don't crack them now because you buy them already cracked. So there's a tendency for people to eat a little bit too much. Wonderful food is the nut, but it's very concentrated. You don't need a lot. And if you only eat what you grow, are you going to eat all the nuts? No, you're not going to eat all the nuts in a couple of months because then you've got no nuts for the rest of the year. So traditionally, when people grew all their own food, they didn't need nutritionists because the very availability of food, availability at different times of the year, the time it takes to cook basically dictated what to eat. But so many people live in the city. I know in Australia, 75% of people are living in cities. And they're so quick, so fast. It's just grabbing for the fast food and there it all is. There it all is. And what's the result? People are getting bigger and bigger. Can you reverse this? The good news is you can. What's the first step? I don't think you actually have to stop the carbohydrates, just reduce them. Just reduce them. And when you understand the 3 essential food groups, let's do an assessment of the 3 essential food groups. 3 essential food groups. Do you know what essential means? Body doesn't make it, you got to put it in. The 3 essential food groups are fibre. So why fibre? For a few reasons. Fibre slowly releases the glucose. Do you know what that means? It takes longer for your food to break down. Do you know what that means? You can actually leave a little bit of break between meals because the most popular way of eating today is called time-restricted eating. I don't know if you've heard of the time-restricted eating. Time-restricted eating is eating twice, 6 hours apart in a 24-hour period. It came out of the 5-2 diet, came out of the intermittent fasting diet, and they're hailing it today as the best way to eat. In fact, people are losing weight. Diabetics are conquering their diabetes. Hang on a minute. What have diabetics been told for the last 4 or 5 decades? You got to eat every 2 hours. Is that right? You got to eat every 2 hours. Notice that they don't say, we made a mistake. Notice what they say. New research reveals. How new is breakfast like a king, lunch like a queen, tea like a pauper? That's been around for hundreds of years. No, it's not new research. It's not new research at all. And you know, I found interesting, I love museums. I like it looking at the old days and what people did. A lot of people always ate their main meal in the middle of the day because they didn't have electricity, light to cook the big meal at night. But with this fast society we have today, and children go to school and people go to work, it's called 9 to 5, and so many people go to bed too late and they wake up too late. I've got to be out the door in 5 minutes. What's the best way to be out of the door in 5 minutes? Grab the cereals. Where's my cereals? Whew. How come they missed out? Grab the cereals, pour milk on it, goes like wet tissue paper, down the hatch in 10 minutes, out the door. No wonder it was popular. Or grab a slice of bread, or grab a croissant, lunch it on the way. Doesn't take you far. And I'll show you why it doesn't take you far. Because of the 3 essential food groups. The 3 essential food groups are fibre. Fibre because it slowly releases the glucose. Fibre because in the fibre part of the food you often get a concentration of your nutrients. Fibre because our colon, our small and large intestine, need the fibre, the insoluble fibre, to move things along, sweep all the corners, stimulate peristalsis. Fibre because fibre feeds our microorganisms. In the last class today, I'm going to be talking about the garden that lives in your body, the microorganisms, the microbiome that lives in the gut. And fibre fuels, fibre feeds those microorganisms. You can have 10 different apples from 10 different types of apple trees, and each apple will feed a different microorganism in the gut. That's why variety is so important. What's the old saying? Variety is the spice of life. Variety is the spice to your microorganisms in your gut. Just a few reasons why fibre is so important. The second essential food group is protein. The membrane around every cell, let me give you some reasons. The membrane around every cell is 50% protein. Whether you're 50 kilos or 300 kilos, the protein, or the membrane, I should say, around every cell is 50% protein. And as the new cell is made, it's made up of amino acids, which is a breakdown from the protein we eat. You cannot function without protein, you cannot heal without protein. The neurotransmitters in our brain that flash from cell to cell are a breakdown of the protein we eat, called amino acids. Just a few reasons why protein is an essential nutrient. The third essential nutrient, this might surprise you and it might not, fat. It's fat. Fat is an essential nutrient. Why is fat an essential nutrient? Because 50% of the membrane around every cell in the body is fat, except for the brain cell. The brain cell looks a little bit different. The membrane around the brain cell, yes, is 50% fat, but there's an arm coming out of the nerve cell that has a fatty sheath around it, so that's another 30% fat. So our brain cells are about 70% fat. That means fat is important. Yes, it's an essential food group. Keeps our skin soft. Keeps our brain working well. Fat is essential. In fact, I know one lady who's on a fat-free diet. Now, not a lot of people go with a fat-free diet. I think most people today realise it's a scam. Fat phobia is easing. I meet an 80, 90-year-old lady, she won't touch fat. Because it was in the 70s, 80s, 90s that they really slammed fat as the cause of heart disease, but it's never been proven. Did you know that? It's never been proven. Dr. Malcolm Kendrick, he's a British GP who specialises in cardiovascular health. He wrote a book called The Great Cholesterol Con, because it's a total con. He said there is no proof. He said, I'm still waiting for the proof that fat causes heart disease. He said it does not. And that's one of the reasons so many people stopped fat, because they don't want to die of a heart attack. They stopped the butter and said, eat margarine. Did that reduce heart disease? Not at all. Not at all. I never ate it because I didn't like the taste of it. It's a toxic fat. That's a dangerous fat. Your body knows butter, but it does not know margarine. It says alien out of space has just entered the body, get rid of it quickly, goes out the skin. Well, skin cancer rates have increased. Cancer in the body has increased to the point that cancer and heart disease are neck to neck today. That one didn't work. Is there a problem with butter? Well, the biggest problem is what the cows are eating. And the biggest problem is what the cows are given, the chemicals that they're given, the antibiotics they're given. And then, of course, that's concentrated in the fat. But regarding the molecular structure of butter with the human body, not a problem. So what fat do I eat? I eat olive oil. Olive oil and coconut oil, they've stood the test of time. They were eaten in abundance before there was heart disease. So what caused heart disease? Well, let's look at when it began. It began in the Industrial Revolution. What did they do in the Industrial Revolution? They started to create things like margarine. They created high heat chemical equipment to be able to get oil out of hard seeds. You see, coconut oil and olive oil are both oils that are extracted from the flesh of the plant, so women could just about make them in their kitchens. back in the day when people ate just about everything that they'd made. So they created high heat chemical equipment to get oil out of hard seeds. And that destroys the oil, totally destroys it, and it becomes mutagenic. What's that? Cancer-causing, carcinogenic. So don't touch those oils. I don't touch them. And when you go into the supermarket, they're the ones that are on special in clear plastic bottles, cheap. Canola oil, soy oil, corn oil, safflower oil, nasty. Don't touch them. Keep walking until you get to the olive oil. Extra virgin, first cold pressed, in a dark bottle. Yes, it might be twice the price, but when you eat that oil, the body will go, oh, thank you, thank you. I met a 80, 90-year-old lady, she won't touch fat. I meet a 60, 70-year-old lady, they're having a little bit. I meet a 30, 40-year-old lady, did I miss 50? 40, 50-year-old lady, they're okay with it. I meet people in their 20s, 30s, oh, no problem with fat. And it's an illustration, as one doctor said several years ago, it's going to take a whole nother generation to get fat phobia out of the brain. I think it's out of the brain. And as I showed you in my previous screen, fat doesn't make you fat. When you understand digestion, when you understand what the body does with fat, especially the saturated fat, do you know what it loves to do with saturated fat? Burn it as fuel. It's like the Australian farmer up in Queensland where it's a bit warmer. He got coconuts cheap and he opened them to feed his cows. He wanted to fatten up his cows. And the cows lost fat, put on muscle and started bounding round the paddocks. They were given the coconut oil and they didn't get fat, but they got more muscle. So if you want to lose fat and put on muscle and start bounding round the paddocks, what do you eat? Coconut. Coconut. But I think it's best to eat the fat that's in your area. And if you have a look on planet Earth, and you have a look at traditionally the fats that people ate, in the middle we've got the equator where it's hot. So what fat do they eat there? Coconut, palm oil, perfectly designed for the heat because it's heat resistant, light resistant, and oxygen resistant. That's why those saturated fats are the best fats if you want to do a saute, because they're heat resistant. And then we go up the planet and we come to the Mediterranean. And in the Mediterranean, what's grown there? Olive oil, almond oil, that's the omega-9. Not a saturated fat, but only one little empty spot, so mono, almost. And up here, we get the omega-6, many open spots on it, so that's light sensitive, light, and heat sensitive, and oxygen sensitive. So where do you get your omega-6s from? In your olive oil. In your olive oil. And right up the top, and also in chia and flaxseed oils, you've got your omega-3. So you see, traditionally, people ate fats that were in their area. Now, I'm just thinking of how I get that off. Ah, here we go. So I like to look at the area, what fat's eaten. And traditionally, the people eating a lot of saturated fat, they weren't big. The fact is, these are the 3 essential nutrients. What about the non-essential nutrient? Oops, let me go back.
Yeah, that's one.
I think I'm right now. I am. What about the non-essential nutrient? Non-essential, this one might surprise you. The non-essential nutrient is actually carbohydrates. Do you know what that means? You can live very well without carbohydrates. Now, as I mentioned earlier, carbohydrates, nothing wrong with them. It's only when they're overdone. But we have seen powerful weight loss by people concentrating on more fibre, more protein, and generous fats, and greatly dropping that carbohydrate. A common phone call or email that we get after a week at Misty Mountain learning this is 10 kilos lost in 6 weeks. That's pretty good. In fact, that's very good. And especially when at the same time they're exercising. And if you want to lose weight in a specific area, you can do exercises for that area. Say you wanted to lose it in the torso area, then you do push-ups, sit-ups, and you target that area. So as you lose the weight, you'll find that it'll lose more in that area. Trick question. So as we've seen, one of the best ways to lose weight is to drop those carbohydrates right down. But what if someone to put on weight? I get people come to me and say, Barbara, how can I put on weight? I said, why do you want to put on weight? You look good to me. If you're feeling good, it's great. And I think it's because so many people have told them, you're too skinny, you're too skinny. My husband's tall and skinny. He's always been skinny. And when he was young, his friend said, man, you are so skinny. And he looked at his friend and he said, man, you are so fat. Oh, I was highly offended. So you can say someone's skinny, but you can't say they're fat. So that, we find, is a very easy way to do it. I'm going to take you through the Sustainme principles and show you how. You've gone red H there. It's showing you that this is the sunshine. Sunshine. Why sunshine? The reason why sunshine is so important, because the ultraviolet rays hit the skin. They cause a form of cholesterol just under the skin to be converted to vitamin D. See how important cholesterol is? And vitamin D is essential for the absorption of minerals, calcium and minerals into our body. So the sunshine is important because our body needs nourishment. Use of water. When I was in Andalusia, the northern part of southern Spain, I stayed with a family with 4 children. 2-year-old, 4-year-old, 6-year-old, 9-year-old. These 2 children, they ate the time-restricted eating diet. Now, most people think children could not do it, but they ate breakfast about 9 in the morning, and then they ate another meal at 3 in the afternoon. They were the happiest children. They weren't skinny, they weren't fat, they were just normal kids, happy, lots of energy, and they ate 2 meals a day. Now, the little 2-year-old that you might think they'll struggle, well, he would sleep from, 12 till 2 and wake up and have some water and then be ready for his meal. So between meals, that's when you drink water. A lot of people don't realise the hunger pang you feel at, an hour or 2 after the meal. It's usually dehydration. And the body doesn't know the difference between hunger and thirst. So I used to feed my children 7:30 in the morning, and then I'd feed them at 2 o'clock. I homeschooled them. So it was just very convenient because there was no afternoon school, and they loved that. All the school was done. But I gave them a meal high in fibre, great proteins and good fats, because that meal allows you to go 6 hours, 5 to 6 hours between meals. And as I said, sometimes I was on the veranda cooing. Where are they? It's 2 o'clock. They're not screaming at me for food. What helps go the distance between meals is water. And take that little crystal of Celtic salt or Baja salt or Argyll salt. That's your Irish salt, yeah? Argyll salt. And it's got a lot of minerals in it. Take it before each glass of water and it'll pull the water inside the cell, helps to hydrate you. So have that whole salt. Not the refined salt. We want the whole salt with all of its minerals. How much water should we be drinking a day? Approximately 8 glasses. Start early. I go to bed with a big glass of water beside my bed. As soon as I wake up in the morning, I have water. If I get up in the middle of the night, I have a few mouthfuls. Don't give your body a torrential downpour. What's a torrential downpour? 500 ml all at once. What happens in a torrential downpour? Topsoil gets washed away, flooding. You take 500 mil all at once, it's not long before 500 mil is going to have to come out all at once. But if you take it little by little, and every gardener knows that if the plants are dry, you just give them a little bit. A few minutes later, a little bit more. A few minutes later, a little bit more. But if the plant's dry and you put 500 mil in, every gardener knows where's the water? Just runs out the bottom. So little by little by little, between meals. Stop half an hour before the meal and resume about an hour and a half to 2 hours after the meal. Then you allow your stomach to be as acid as it should be, which it should be, because it needs to be acid to break our protein down. Sleep. It wasn't an issue before electric lights, but it's become an even bigger issue since technology. Let me give you God's perfect mathematical formula. 8 hours to work, 8 hours to play, 8 hours to sleep. Did everyone get that one? It's a nice order. I used to play with my kids after the work was done. We need 8 hours and we need at least 2 before midnight. And if you want to be in bed by 10, you've got to start planning it at 8. So I really love the times of these meetings because you're going to be able to get home and be able to get into bed. I try and be in bed by 9. My favourite's 9 to 5. Some people like 10 to 6 because there are processes that happen in our brain while we sleep. I've listed them all in detail in my book, Sustainme. The chapter's called Sweet Sleep. Our bodies revive and recharge at night. Our brains revive and recharge at night. But the reviving and the recharging and the acceleration of healing is most prominent at 10, 11, 12, 1. So if someone's going to bed at 2 o'clock every night or 1 o'clock every night or even midnight, they're missing out on half of that. One of the contributing factors why people they're not healing the way they should, because our body's been designed to heal itself. And it'll heal itself if you give it the right conditions. And it'll balance itself out if you give it the right conditions. So we find what I'm suggesting to you, the underweight, put it on, the overweight, take it off, and the right weight, just stay the same. If you're not used to 8 hours, start to aim towards that. One lady said, I go to bed at midnight every night. She said, I know that if I go to bed at 9, I'm not going to be able to sleep. I said, I'll let you work it out. She said, I worked it out. She told me a few months later. She said, I started to go to bed at 11:30. And then 2 weeks later, I started to go to bed at 11. And then 2 weeks later, 10:30. Then 2 weeks later, 10. She said, I did it. And the body likes that when you ease it little by little by little. Trust in God. Trust in God takes into consideration the emotional and the mental aspects of weight loss. Because some people eat because it's their comfort food. And one lady that came to our program, she said, I just get sugar cravings. But she said, after doing the program, I no longer have sugar cravings. You know why? Because she's now eating a meal high in fibre, generous protein, great fats. But if you eat a meal, let me go this way, that is high carbohydrate, you'll constantly crave carbohydrates. It's like any drug, and I see the sugar as a highly addictive drug. The more heroin you take, the more heroin you want. The more methamphetamines you take, the more you want. The more sugar you take, the more you want. The more games you play on your phone, the more games you want. They're addictive cycles. You've got to break that. And one of the best ways to do it, I'm going to put a plus here. I'm learning. One of the best ways to do it is to fast. And one of the titles listed in the title for this meeting was fasting. Yes, fasting is a great way to lose weight, because when you fast, you now start eating up your fat cells. So when you're not putting food in your body must still run, every organ must run, so it goes to the storehouse. You see, I liken the glycogen stores to the kitchen cupboards. And when those bottles run out, you go down to the basement, and they're your basement stores. Your basement stores are your fat stores. And that's when someone wants to lose weight, that's where they want to go. In fact, I call it, there we are, I call it one of the best fuel depots in the human body is just fat stores. And to access that, you fast. What's fasting? No food, no solid food. Some people choose water fasting. Some people choose to do juice fasting. We do juice fasting at our retreat, but it's all liquid. We say to our guests, you wouldn't be able to eat in a day what we put in your juices. So fasting is a great way to do 1 or 2 days a week, 1 or 2 days a fortnight, 1 or 2 days a month. And that can really kickstart weight loss, because that's where we're going, into breaking down the fat stores. And what I also find with weight loss, anxiety. Anxiety and restlessness, depression often drives people to the comfort food. And with those people, we find fasting an excellent way to break that. Because while they're fasting, they're looking for other ways to bring peace to themselves. And abstain, I'm going to go down to inhale. Inhale through the nose. So here's just a by the way, what you can do to ease anxiety. And it's called the cube. It's breathing in for the count of 4 seconds, only through the nose, holding for 4, breathing out for 4 seconds, holding for 4. That's the cube. And you do that 10 times. If you're still anxious, do it 20 times. The reason that helps is when you breathe through your nose and breathe with your abdominal muscles, you activate the parasympathetic nervous system. And the parasympathetic nervous system is your peaceful, calming nervous system. But when people are high chest, mouth breathers, that stimulates the sympathetic nervous system, and that's your fight and flight anxious nervous system. So you can actually change anxiety by just flipping round the way that you breathe. But when you go to bed early, you are less likely to put on weight because your body's reviving and charging. When you trust in God, when you give him all your problems, the Bible says in 1 Peter 5 verse 7, cast all your care upon him, for he cares for you. He's a solution God. Start to read some of those beautiful promises in the Bible and you will not be so anxious. And start to breathe through the nose deeply if ever you feel anxiety. And take a crystal of Celtic salt and have the water. These are simple things that you can do just to ease any anxiety. And there are some things that must stop. Coffee. Often in one meeting there's a groan whenever I mention coffee. We call it Australia's darling. I think it's certainly Italians' darling. It's Americans' darling. I don't drink coffee. People say, why don't you drink coffee? I say, I just watch the people suffer. Day 1, Misty Mountain Health Retreat. See, when you stop coffee, you get a terrible headache. That's because when you have a cup of coffee, it creates a crisis response. And your body has to adapt and adjust to that crisis situation. And that's why a lot of people like coffee. They say, oh, it just gets me going. Oh, that's right, it's created a crisis. Oh, it just makes me feel better. Oh, that's because a crisis has just been created. So if you are a coffee drinker, my suggestion is don't stop or you won't be able to come to class tomorrow. Ease off it very slowly. ease off it very slowly. In fact, if you're on 3 cups of coffee a day, go for 3 half cups. Then go for 3 1/3 cups. Then go for 3 1/4 cups. And then maybe go for just 2 1/4 cups. And then you can, within a week, often ease yourself out without any pain and suffering. Because believe it or not, that quick hit that people love to get from coffee, it disrupts the neurotransmitters in the brain, which means it's increasing anxiety. It is increasing depression. It increases blood pressure going up, because in a crisis your blood pressure goes up. It also contributes to diabetes because you get an insulin response every time a crisis is created. And because it leaves an acid effect in the body, our minerals are leached out of our bones to negate that. I trust I've convinced you. So there are some things that must stop. That's what abstain means. The refined sugar absolutely must stop. To detox from that, one of the best ways is just 2 days, 1 or 2 days of just fasting. And when you break your fast, break it carefully. Don't sit down to a huge meal. Often a little bit of raw and a little bit of cooked is the best way to do it. Inhale through your nose, you're going to get more oxygen at the cellular level. Nutrition, we've looked at nutrition. Nutrition is vital for including fibre, protein and fat as part of your diet. As a plant-based lady, I get my protein from legumes, lentils, chickpeas, lima beans, black-eyed beans, nuts and seeds. That's where I get my protein. And the fats we've already mentioned. Moderation. Moderation in all the good things. Moderation in when you eat. The time-restricted diet, eating twice, 6 hours apart in a 24-hour period, is proving to be one of the most effective ways to lose weight. See, when we go to sleep at night, our stomach wants to sleep. But if you've just had a large meal, I know in Australia people eat breakfast like a pauper, lunch like a pauper, and the tea is the king and the queen together. And then they lay down, and finally they've got nutrients, and what do the body says? Oh no, they've gone to sleep, we're going to have to store it. So eating that large meal at the end of the day, that can also be contributing to putting on the excess weight. The last one is exercise, one of my favourites. And exercise can flip the metabolic rate around so that we start burning more fuel, especially the high-intensity interval training. So Jenny and I, we're walking up very fast those hills. You don't have to run when you're walking up those sand hills, and then down again, and then up again. And if you don't live near the sea, and if you can't do the sand hills, you could do, a lot of people do exercise bike, especially when it's really cold or wet outside. And it's easy to do the interval training because you're holding on. If you're a bit unsteady, you're holding on, and you can go very, very fast and then slow down a little bit, very, very fast and then slow down a bit. And what that does is that causes a release of the human growth hormone. And the human growth hormone is released when we do high intensity. The human growth hormone is what the movie stars pay $1,000 a week for, but I'm offering it to you cut price today. You only have to do 15 minutes high intensity exercise a day. And that will cause a release of the human growth hormone, which remains active for 24 hours. And the human growth hormone causes the body to start burning fat as fuel. The human growth hormone releases another hormone that opens fat cells. It starts releasing the stored fuel, opens the fat cells so that it can be burnt as fuel. The human growth hormone increases the circulation of the blood to the skin. The human growth hormone also it increases the body's ability to utilise protein. Wow, no wonder the movie stars pay $1,000 a week for it, because their profession is dependent on them looking good. All you have to do is go into that high intensity. Push-ups will do it. Rebounding, running up hills, If you're a swimmer, swimming very fast, just find something. If you were here, running up and down those steps several times, that'll get you the high intensity. Anything that gets that high intensity causes a release of that human growth hormone. And once it's released, it will remain active for 24 hours. And it's a very powerful way to trigger the body into starting to break down those fat stores. And another reason why it works so well, and you'll see this in every weight loss book, is glucose burns at 4 calories per gram. Whereas fat, it burns at 9 calories per gram. Now, it's this information that is often used to tell people, if you want to lose weight, don't eat fat. But what they don't realise is what a calorie is. A calorie is a unit of energy. And that's why the human growth hormone flips to burning fat as fuel, because it'll give them more than twice the units of energy that glucose will give them. So as you can see, let's just go back. Implementing these Sustainme principles is a great way to trigger weight loss, especially if you begin with a fast. Now, there's one other thing that is powerful in weight loss, and that brings me into my second class of the day, and that is balancing the hormones. Why? Let me show you. From cholesterol, our body makes a hormone, From cholesterol, our body makes a hormone named pregnenolone, and from pregnenolone, the body makes what's often called mother hormone, which is progesterone. And progesterone is called mother hormone. There's a reason why progesterone is called mother hormone, because progesterone is mother or precursor or controller of the daughters, which are estrogen. And mother hormone is also the source of her son, testosterone. And when progesterone levels are where they should be, progesterone has a protective effect on her son, testosterone, and keeps the daughter under control. One of estrogen's role in the body is that of a cell proliferator. Now this brings us to weight loss. Yeah?
I'm going to lend you my phone. We're going to finish at 3. Will I put it here?
Okay. What does cell proliferator mean? Causes massive cell growth. So if a person has a hormonal imbalance and estrogen levels are high, it's going to be nearly impossible to lose weight, even implementing all the things we just looked at. And that's why I was so glad to see that my second class today was on hormones, because hormones can often be the missing link if someone's really struggling with weight loss. So what I want to look at is, well, why would estrogen be out of control? Why would it be high? Our body runs according to precision balance, and anything that throws the balance out is going to cause a problem. So let's have a look at how these hormones work. So we're going to have a look at the monthly cycle, and it'll show you how they work. I love the proverb 14 verse 6, that knowledge is easy to him that understands. So I want to give you an understanding of how these hormones work, and then you automatically have the knowledge of what to do to restore the balance. So we've got day 1 up to day 28 in this monthly cycle. This is important news for a man too. In fact, I was giving this lecture a few weeks ago, and a man came up to me before it, big man, he was about 6'6". He came up and he said, "Do men have hormones?" I said, "They do." He said, "I'm staying." So that the men and women can both have hormonal imbalances. And if a woman's hormones are out of balance because of the contraceptive pill, because of all the things we'll look at, she can give birth to a male child that is born with a hormonal imbalance. So let's have a look at how these hormones work in the monthly cycle. And we're going to be giving estrogen, the colour red, and we're going to be giving testosterone, the colour green. Wrong end, green. So estrogen is a cell proliferator, and one of the roles of progesterone is happy hormone. And that will make sense as we go through. Because when a person, particularly a lady, is lacking progesterone, can you see that be contributing to her anxiety, contributing to her depression? And sometimes the anxiety and depression can cause comfort eating. So can you see how it's all intertwined? So day 1 of the monthly cycle is a day that a woman's beginning to menstruate. And day 1 of the monthly cycle, estrogen levels are low. Day 1 of the monthly cycle, progesterone levels are low. But by day 7, we've got a rise in estrogen. So in the second week of the month, estrogen is the star player in this monthly cycle or this monthly dance. And I'm going to go to the stage where the monthly cycle is played out, which is the reproductive organs of a woman's body. Wrong one. I forget, I haven't got a whiteboard, I've got a blackboard. There we go. So here's the uterus. Wrong one. Here's the uterus. And that is the cervix. And this is the fallopian tubes that come out of the top of the uterus. And here are the ovaries. And the ovaries are connected to the uterus by a ligament. And here is the birth canal. So every month, this monthly cycle is playing out its dance or its performance inside the reproductive organs. And so with this rise in estrogen in the second week, it's causing massive cell growth in the lining of the uterus, putting the blood nest back into the uterus, which came away in the first week. So in the first week of the cycle is the week a woman begins to menstruate. So the blood nest is coming away. But when we go to the second week, with the rise in estrogen as a cell proliferator, is causing massive cell growth. It's also causing massive cell growth in the ovaries, causing eggs to fully develop. It's also causing massive cell growth in the lining of the uterus to the point of increasing a lubricant in the birth canal. So you can see that as a cell proliferator, estrogen plays a role, and an important role. In fact, it's estrogen that causes the skinny young girl to develop into a beautiful, shapely woman. But if estrogen levels remain high, can you see the beautiful, shapely woman can get out of shape the other way? I liken estrogen to fire and water. Good slave, bad master. It certainly has a role, as you will see. So going back to the area that this is playing out, the reproductive organs of a woman's body, here's the ovary. So we're going to make a hole in it. So the egg bursts forth from the ovary, and then it travels up into the fallopian tubes. The fallopian tubes literally grab that egg and pull it up. And the fallopian tubes are ever moving like this, causing the egg to go up, up, up. Now the hole where the egg bursts forth, it develops a blister. And that blister is called corpus luteum. So here's the blister. It's called corpus luteum. And I've written it in green because corpus luteum is the main site of production in a woman's body. So with the development of corpus luteum at around day 14, we've now got a rise in progesterone. So coming into the 3rd week, we've got a rise in progesterone and a drop in estrogen because we do not need estrogen anymore because we've got our blood nest, we've got our egg, we've got our lubricant, so estrogen can now go backstage. Estrogen levels can start to drop. But coming into this 3rd week with this rise in progesterone, progesterone has an effect. Progesterone has a ripening effect on the lining of the uterus, putting the finishing touches on the uterus. Progesterone also has another effect, and the other effect is, let's see. I'm going to magnify the cervix for you. It's like a soft little cushion. That's sideways, that's top on. So let's have a look at it sideways, magnified. It's got a mucus plug and it's got these little soft sides. But with the rise in progesterone, the mucus plug goes, the sides come up a little tighter, and then a special form of lubricant is released around the cervix. And that lubricant is designed specifically for the entry of sperm up into the cervix, into carrying through to the uterus. If the sperm meet this cervix, difficult to get entry, but it's the smallest cell in the human body. Did you know between 2 and 500 million sperm are released with one ejaculation? And sometimes up to half come out. And if it meets this cervix, it still gets through, but if it meets this cervix, this lubricant literally grabs that sperm and shoots it up, and it's got a long journey, long way to go. And some of them go down the wrong road, they die and get taken away by the blood. But some of them go down the right road, they've found their prize, which is, of course, the egg. And the covering of the egg looks like this. And the sperm must nudge its way in. But I recently discovered that the egg chooses the sperm. Because remember, there's a lot of them. It basically looks and goes, I'll have that one. And once that sperm enters into the egg, all the other folds shut tight and a chemical is released to stop any other sperm getting in. But if two happen to get in at the same second, that's when the twins share the placenta. Isn't it incredible? But something else about sperm, it has an immune suppressant property. When sperm goes through the prostate gland of a man, it takes on an immune suppressant property. And the reason is that sperm is an alien to woman's body, and when sperm enters woman's body, her immune system rises to attack it. But the immune suppressant property of sperm knocks back her immune system. Isn't it a miracle we're here? But woman's body has memory. And every time her husband's sperm enters her immune system rises and goes, it's all right, it's husband, we'll just stand back. But can you imagine how dangerous it can be if a woman has multiple partners, and how dangerous it can be in the area of anal sex? Let's just keep to one partner. So what happens if there is conception. What happens if a woman does conceive? If a woman does conceive, then her progesterone levels can soar 200%. Don't we often say when a woman's pregnant, she's just blossoming? I was pregnant or breastfeeding non-stop for 14 years. I breastfed 3 months into every pregnancy. People say, oh, you poor thing. I said, oh, no, it was wonderful. My progesterone levels were good. There are 3 estrogens. So mother progesterone has 3 daughters. There's estrone. An estrone is called E1. There's estradiol called E2. And there's estriol called E3. And estriol is the delicate estrogen. And estriol levels rise in pregnancy. So I'm putting a heart there because that's the delicate estrogen, the estriol. Whereas estradiol and estrone, they have strong cell proliferator action, and that will make sense as we move on in our illustration. But what happens if there's no conception? If there's no conception by day 26, both estrogen levels drop right down and also progesterone levels drop right down. And when both of those levels drop, we are now back to day 1 of the monthly cycle. When both of those levels drop down, then the blood supply to the uterus is cut, and when the blood supply to the uterus is cut, the blood nest comes away. This is what the monthly cycle should look like, but it rarely looks like that today, and there's always a reason. So we're going to have a look at the reasons why there'd be an imbalance. And we've got to go back to 1957. I don't know if anyone remembers what happens in 1957, but in 1957, the pharmaceutical company introduced women to the pill. And the women were happy. In fact, the 1960s called the sexual revolution. Women they were able to have sex without falling pregnant. They didn't even have to think about it. But in the last 30, 40 years, we're starting to see the contraceptive pill has caused a lot of problems. Elaine Hollingsworth, she's an Australian health writer. She's not with us anymore, but she called it the mass murder of millions of women. Ooh, strong words. Why does she say that? Well, the pharmaceutical companies grow acres and acres of Mexican wild yam. And that Mexican wild yam contains a plant chemical called diosgenin. And in a laboratory, diosgenin can be converted to progesterone. It's called progesterone because it has an identical molecular structure to the progesterone that is made in a woman's body. But the pharmaceutical company can't patent that. They can only patent something new. So they add a few more atoms and come up with a synthetic estrogen. And the original pill was just synthetic estrogen. But what they began to see was this synthetic estrogen is causing growths in the reproductive organs. Back. Growths. Too much estrogen, too much endometriosis. Too much endometriosis means that the endometrium that lines the uterus, it starts to wander. See, this is called endometrium. Too much estrogen, too much endometrium, and now we've got little pockets of endometrium all through the abdominal wall. And every month when the blood nest comes away, they all bleed, but they've got nowhere to go. And the woman experiences excruciating pain. Before the pill, in fact, in 1957, 1950, endometriosis, no one even knew what it was. And you will find with the introduction of the pill and the use of the pill, in fact, within 10 years it was starting to be seen. By the 1970s, women were getting endometriosis. They started to get fibroids. growing in the uterus, cysts on the ovaries, growths on the cervix, growths in the birth canal, growths on the breast. And they had to do something. This high estrogen, remember what estrogen is? It's a cell proliferator. It causes massive cell growth. Too much endometrium, too much cell growth in those reproductive organs. And so they added a few more atoms in another area and they came up with a synthetic progesterone. It's called progestin or progestone. Has that helped? No. That synthetic progesterone competes with our progesterone on the cell. No, that has not helped at all. So I want to show you what's happening when a woman's on the pill. She takes the pill for 3 weeks and then she takes a sugar pill. So when she takes the pill for 3 weeks, those synthetic hormones are fed into this biochemical pathway that the body uses to make hormones, and it causes a disruption and the body thinks, what's going on? Must be pregnant. And because it thinks it's pregnant, it doesn't release the egg. And because it doesn't release the egg, the lady doesn't fall pregnant. But if the egg's not released, corpus luteum is not released. So let me show you what's happening week after week, after month, after year on the pill. The estrogen levels are coming up here. Where's progesterone? The progesterone levels are down here. So no wonder premenstrual tension happens, postnatal depression, anxiety. All these conditions are popping up because now the lady is missing her happy hormone. And at the same time, with this rise in estrogen, growths are appearing, endometriosis in some women, fibroids in another woman, breast cancer in some women, uterine cancer in some women, ovarian cancer in some women. You can get 50 women with this estrogen dominance, progesterone deficiency, and they'll all have different symptoms. High estrogen opposes thyroid function. How many women were on the pill when they're in their teens and their 20s, and now in their 50s they've been diagnosed with a thyroid problem? Progesterone, mother hormone, happy hormone, she stimulates bone-building cells. But when she's down there, the bones aren't being built. What's that called? Osteoporosis. How many women in their teens and 20s were on the pill and now they're in their 50s, 60s and they've been diagnosed with osteoporosis? Are they told the cause? No, they're just told it's just you. Have you noticed? But the Proverb 26 verse 2 says the curse causeless shall not come. It's Old English. It means no problem, no osteoporosis, no fibroid, no endometriosis happens without a cause. There's always a cause. That's Newton's third law of motion. To every action, there's an equal and an opposite reaction. There is always a cause. And so if a lady's got osteoporosis, she's given a drug called Fosamax. Drugs never cure disease. Was that clear? Drugs never cure disease. They just mask the symptoms. Well, let me give you the side effects of Fosamax. The jaw starts to break down. The jaw starts to disintegrate. Just Google Fosamax and have a look at the side effects. They're all there. But I've seen women retain and regain their bone strength by balancing the hormones, implementing the Sustainme principles. Isn't that good news? Because we live in a body that's been designed to heal itself. And to be able to heal, it has to be properly balanced. But what if the person was never on the pill? And by the way, how many women who've been on the pill, Now they're in their 50s, 60s, they're getting hot flushes, they've got weight gain, no desire for sex, and when they have sex, it's painful. Thyroid problems, just being diagnosed with osteoporosis. Eesh. And they're not as deadly as something called breast cancer, uterine cancer, ovarian cancer, and thyroid cancer. But let's say the lady goes to the doctor, she's got hot flushes. So he gives her more synthetic hormones called hormone replacement therapy. She's happy, the flushes stopped. Why have the flushes stopped? Remember what drugs do? They just mask. The flushes stopped because the body thinks it's pregnant now. Because the hormones have got a little disruption, so it puts all its energy into the breast. 6 years later, she's got a lump on her breast. She's diagnosed with breast cancer. Eesh. If you don't turn the tap off, you're still going to be mopping up in the other corner. If you don't address the base cause, you will never have a cure. But some women have never been on the pill. And they've still got all the symptoms of a hormonal imbalance. Meat. A cattle farmer's wife told me, she said they knock on our door once a month pushing the growth stimulants. We're told when to stop so it's not picked up in the blood test. It's not in the blood test, but it's in the tissues. Growth stimulants. What causes a chicken to be fully developed in 5 weeks? Growth stimulants. In the chicken, it's in the egg, and if it's in the meat, and it's in the product. But there are some people who are plant eaters and have never been on the pill. There's more. When I was a little girl of the 50s, 60s, all my clothes were cotton, except for in the wintertime I had a woolly jumper on. And my lunch was wrapped up in greaseproof paper in a brown paper bag. Today we are awash with plastics. And these plastics have chemicals in them that mimic estrogen. Even some clothes. There were 3 fabrics that were created in a chemical laboratory. That's enough for me. I don't want them near me. Nylon, acrylic, polyester. You have beautiful wool in Ireland. You have beautiful linen, cottons. It's time to support our local industries. And there is a mill. I went there the other day. Could be having it. It's called Eru, and it's the only mill that does Irish wool. Because most of your wool goes overseas, and then you buy it back. Irish wool. And some of the wool is so soft. So get away from the plastic fabrics, get away from all the plastics. One guest said to me, Barbara, I'm going to have to throw my clothes out. I said, well, there are wonderful shops called second-hand shops. You can get some good stuff in there until you build up your wardrobe. Go back to the natural fibres. Our skin breathes and absorbs. Don't let them go on the skin. So plastics, chemicals, got to get the chemicals out of the home, especially in the laundry cupboard, especially in the kitchen, under the kitchen sink. Under my laundry cupboard, you'll find sodium bicarbonate, white vinegar, biodegradable washing detergent, and a little bottle of eucalyptus oil. That's all. Oh, there's a scrubbing brush in there. Remember scrubbing brushes? It's called elbow grease. That's what we call it. Get the chemicals out of our food. Go organic as much as possible. So how can we turn this around? Number 1, eliminate. If you like meat and you want to eat meat, it must be organic. I think it's too dangerous not to be today. Start to explore wonderful things you can do with legumes. In my book, Self-Heal by Design, I've got recipes at the back, all the recipes on some wonderful ways to cook legumes. We need protein, as you saw, but it's finding out how you can make those legumes taste delicious. So eliminate the pill, eliminate HRT. So how do we stop having babies popping up everywhere? Our body gives us 3 signs. Women, ladies will get 3 signs. You see, sex is two-part, contraception should be two-part. I'm going to give you the lady's role and then the man's role. So the lady's role is to know when she's ovulating. Her body will give her 3 signs. One sign is she takes her temperature every morning and she'll find it'll do this, it'll drop and then go up onto a higher plane. And that drop and up onto a higher plane tells her she's begun to ovulate. And most women begin ovulating around day 14. That's usually, it might be day 13, it might be day 14, but if she takes her temperature, it will show her. The second sign is that the cervix changes. So it's a matter of a lady testing her cervix every day and charting it. In my book, Sustainme, I've got a chapter on women's health, and there's a QR code there, and you can download that and get a chart. So a lady charts her temperature, she charts what her cervix is doing. At first, the lady's got nothing to compare it to, but as the weeks and the months go by, she starts to see the changes. And the lubricant in the birth canal changes. So when estrogen levels are high in the second part of the month, the lubricant is usually white and not as profuse. But when the progesterone levels rise, then you get the clear, stringy lubricant illustrated here. So there are the 3 signs. And what a lady will find is that those 3 signs come together, usually in this week here. So she says to her husband in the second week, I'm safe. The third week, I'm not safe. So 4th week, I'm safe. And so when the lady is not safe, that's when the man either masters the art of withdrawal or he wears a condom. My 3 daughters all chose just when they were going to have their babies because they had mastered the art of knowing when they were ovulating. Now that sounds like a lot of work, but you know what a lady finds? That after a couple of months, she gets to know her body so well, she doesn't actually have to chart it so rigorously anymore. But at first, it's a part of observing and noting what her body is doing. Unfortunately, what the pill has done is it caused so many women to be very disassociated from their body and what their body is doing. So eliminate the pill, eliminate HRT. They are synthetic. They are synthetic hormones causing major disruptions in the body. If you like meat and its products, must be organic. Eliminate the plastic. I think it's impossible to totally eliminate the plastic. But please go to your stainless steel or glass drinking bottles. Please go to ceramic or stainless steel or glass to keep your food in. So just be very mindful of your body's exposure and your food's exposure to plastics. And clean out the kitchen, under the kitchen sink, clean out the cupboards in the laundry. Jack and I, we stayed a lot of Airbnbs, and it's scary what's under the kitchen sink. All of these bottles, and you know, they're nasty. We're poisoning our planet also. It's time to look after our body, look after our planet, get the chemicals out. Second, our liver has the ability to detoxify us from environmental poisons, especially the estrogen. And it'll do it down one of 2 pathways. And the pathway to eliminate estrogen out is stimulated by vitamin B, vitamin B6, B9 and B12. Also, the cabbage family. The cabbage family contain plant chemicals called indoles. And indoles stimulate the pathway that the body uses to eliminate excess estrogen. Number 3, the wild yam cream. And I'm very thankful to Linda, who came over with a nice store of wild yam cream. And when she told me she had 250 jars, I said it's not enough. Because when the ladies hear what this does, builds the bones, gets the thyroid under control, helps to lose weight, boosts the happy hormones. I've seen so many conquer depression by boosting the hormones which boosts estrogen. Remember, estrogen, mother hormone. That's what the wild yam cream does. What the wild yam cream contains is diosgenin. And so what you do, there's 2 pumps every morning and every night. First time, inside of arms. Next time, inside of thighs. Next time, abdomen. Next time, chest. You alternate the sites of application. And what a lady does is she applies this cream for 3 weeks, these 3 weeks of the month. She stops when she's menstruating. And what that diosgenin does, the fat cells take it up and it stimulates the pathway that your body uses to make progesterone. So what we're doing here is reinstating mother hormone. And when you reinstate mother hormone, estrogen levels come back down. If it's a man, testosterone levels are now brought back into proper balance. So whether it be, young girls are getting their periods at 9, that's a hormonal imbalance. Do you know normal is 16 to 18, but you hardly ever hear that today. Another symptom of a hormonal imbalance is endometriosis. This wandering of the endometrium, fibroids in the uterus, cysts on the ovaries, polycystic ovarian syndrome, polyps in these areas. Because estrogen is a cell proliferator, that's what's causing the growths. Lumps in the breast, calcified deposits in the breast cancer, uterine cancer. All of these are an indication of this imbalance. But what I love about this wild yam cream that contains diosgenin, it comes into the body and it works with us. In Psalm 104 verse 14, the Bible says that God gave herbs for the service of man. I love that description. The herbs come in and say, where would you like me? What would you like me to do? And that works with the needs of the bodies. But when drugs come in, they say, they're like robots. Get out of my way, I've got a job to do whether you need it or not. But not the herbs. The herbs work with the body. Dr. John Lee, you can still look at podcasts of Dr. John Lee. And Dr. John Lee, he was probably the first doctor in about the 1980s that blew the whistle on this. And he shows that when you eat the wild yam, it's from the sweet potato family, you can lose up to 400% of its active components because the liver detoxifies it. So when you apply it to the skin, you're getting far more of the active components. So that's why applying it to the skin twice a day, 3 weeks a month. What if a woman is no longer menstruating? She just chooses 1 week of the month where she does not apply the cream. Some ladies choose the first week of the month or the last week of the month, and then it's easy to remember. If a lady had thyroid problems, the yam cream will boost progesterone, which will bring that estrogen down because it's a high estrogen that opposes thyroid function. We've seen ladies conquer depression by going on the yam cream, which boosts progesterone, happy hormone, and implement the lifestyle changes, and then little by little they're able to ease off their antidepressants. Isn't that good news? I don't know anyone who likes being on medication. So the wild yam cream can be applied whether you're 9 or 90. I met a 92-year-old lady who was applying it for her bones. She had osteoporosis. So can you see there's a whole lot of areas that this cream can be used for because it balances the hormones. How long is it taken for? Usually a year. But it doesn't take a year to start to see a reduction of symptoms. Often ladies are finding that within a few weeks they're finding relief. I've met several ladies who've had their uterus out because they have heavy blood loss when all they really needed to do was balance the hormones. One lady said her blood loss halved in the first month of being on the yam cream. But what makes the application of this cream even more powerful is to implement the Sustainme principles, which we just defined. We find when a woman's having a lot of sugar and coffee, then her hormones aren't going to get as balanced as easy because they both contribute to the disruption of the hormones. But what about a man? A man applies the cream 2 pumps every morning, every afternoon, and he doesn't have a break. There's another writer named Cheryl Selman. She wrote a book, Hormone Heresy. She also talks about what I've just shown you today. And she gives this description. She said, men are like the sun. They rise every morning, they conquer the day, they go down at night. But women are like the moon. Sometimes they're full, sometimes they're half, sometimes they're a slither. And that is one of the explanations as to why men apply it twice a day, every day, no break, because they're not cyclic like women. So why would a man apply it? He would apply it for low sperm count. He would apply it for penile dysfunction. One man in his 50s said, I want to tell you this, I'm a bit embarrassed, I don't know how to say it, but this cream puts lead in my pencil. He said, I'm not performing like I was when I was 20, but I'm better than I was. I've also seen men conquer prostate cancer, because one of the reasons that prostate cancer happens is a disruption in the levels of testosterone. So when you boost progesterone levels, it brings testosterone back to where it should be. That's the good news.